She stepped into the training yard with a faded t-shirt, a worn backpack, and her hair tied low, looking like a logistics worker who took a wrong turn. The recruits laughed. Army takes backstage volunteers now. In a combat drill, a male soldier grabbed her collar, tore her shirt down the back, and shouted, "Girls like you are only good at hiding." But when her back tattoo was revealed, a veteran colonel suddenly stood at attention and saluted. The whole camp froze. This wasn't just any tattoo, but the covert symbol of Ghost Viper. Olivia Mitchell didn't belong there, at least not in the eyes of the others. She'd rolled into the NATO training camp in a beat-up pickup truck. Its paint chipped its tires, caked with mud from some back road. Nobody would have guessed she came from one of the wealthiest families in the country, raised in a world of private tutors and gated estates. Olivia didn't carry that world with her. No designer labels, no polished nails, just a plain face and clothes that looked like they'd been washed 100 times. Her boots were scuffed, her backpack held together by a single stubborn strap. But it wasn't just her look that set her apart. It was her stillness, the way she stood with her hands in her pockets, watching the chaos of the camp, like she was waiting for a signal only she could hear. The first day was a gauntlet. Captain Harrow, the head instructor, was a mountain of a man with a voice that could stop a riot. He paced the yard, sizing up the cadets, his eyes locking on Olivia. "You," he barked, pointing a finger. "What's your deal? Supply crew get lost." The group snickered. A girl named Tara, with a sharp blonde ponytail and a smile that didn't reach her eyes, whispered to the cadet next to her. "Bet she's here to check a box. Gender quota, right?" Olivia didn't blink. She looked at Harrow, her face calm, and said, "I'm a cadet, sir." Harrow snorted, waving her off. "Get in line then. Don't slow us down." During the first meal in the mess hall, Olivia carried her tray to a corner table away from the chatter. The room buzzed with recruits swapping stories, their voices loud, their egos louder. A guy named Derek, lean and cocky with a buzz cut, spotted her sitting alone. He grabbed his tray, strutted over, and dropped it on her table with a clatter. "Yo, lost girl," he said loud enough for nearby tables to turn. "This ain't a soup kitchen. You sure you're not here to wash dishes?" The group behind him erupted in laughter. Olivia paused her fork halfway to her mouth and looked at him. "I'm eating," she said, her voice steady. Derek leaned in, smirking. "Yeah. Well, eat faster. You're taking up space real soldiers need." He flicked her tray, sending a spoonful of mashed potatoes splattering onto her shirt. The room howled. Olivia wiped the mess with a napkin, her hands slow, her eyes never leaving her plate. She took another bite like he wasn't even there. Warm-ups were a test of endurance, push-ups until your arms shook, sprints that burned your lungs, burpees in the dirt under a blazing sun. Olivia kept pace, her breathing steady, but her shoelaces kept slipping loose. They were old, frayed, barely holding her boots together. During a sprint, a guy named Lance jogged up beside her. Lance was the group's golden boy, broad-shouldered with a grin that said he'd never lost at anything. "Yo, thrift store," he called loud enough for the whole line to hear. "Your shoe's giving up. Or is that just you?" Laughter rippled through the group. Olivia didn't respond. She knelt, retied her laces with quick, precise fingers, and stood. But as she did, Lance bumped her shoulder hard. She stumbled, her hands hitting the mud, her knees sinking into the wet earth. The group howled. "What's that, Mitchell?" Lance said, smirking. "You signing up to clean the floors or just be our punching bag?" Olivia got up, wiped her palms on her pants, and ran on. Not a word. The laughter followed her all morning. During a break, Olivia sat on a wooden bench pulling a granola bar from her bag. Tara sauntered over with two other cadets, her arms crossed, her voice syrupy with fake concern. "Olivia, right. So where are you even from? Did you win a contest to be here?" Her friends giggled, one covering her mouth like it was all too funny. Olivia took a bite, chewed slowly, and looked up. "I applied," she said, her voice flat like she was stating the weather. Tara's smile tightened. "Okay, but why?" She pressed, leaning in. "You don't exactly scream elite soldier. I mean, look at your everything." She waved a hand at Olivia's muddy t-shirt, her plain brown hair. Olivia set her granola bar down, leaned forward just enough to make Tara flinch. "I'm here to train," she said. "Not to make you feel better about yourself." Tara froze, her cheeks reddening. Whatever she muttered, turning away. "Weirdo. Hey, hold up for a sec. If this story's grabbing you, can you do me a quick favor? pull out your phone, give this video a like, maybe drop a comment below, just a word or two about what's hitting you. And hit subscribe. It means the world to keep telling stories, like Olivia's stories that remind us what it means to stand tall. All right, let's get back to it. The navigation drill was a new kind of hell. Cadets had to cross a forested ridge map in hand under a strict time limit. Olivia moved alone, her compass steady, her steps quiet against the pine needles. A group of 4 cadets, led by a wiry guy named Kyle, spotted her checking her map under a tree. Kyle, who'd been vying for Lance's spotlight, saw his chance. "Hey, Dora the Explorer," he called, his voice cutting through the quiet. "You lost already? Or you just out here picking flowers?" His group laughed, circling closer. Olivia folded her map, her fingers deliberate, and kept walking. Kyle jogged up, snatching the map from her hand. "Let's see how you do without this," he said, tearing it in half and tossing the pieces into the wind. The others cheered. Olivia stopped her eyes, following the scraps as they fluttered away. She looked at Kyle, her face blank, and said, "Hope you know your way back." Then she turned and kept moving, her pace unchanged. Kyle's laughter faltered, but his group kept jeering, their voices echoing through the trees. The rifle disassembly drill came that afternoon, and it was a wake-up call. The cadets had 2 minutes to take apart an M4 carbine, clean it, and reassemble it. Most struggled, their fingers fumbling with the pins, swearing as parts slipped. Lance finished in a messy 143, grinning like he'd aced it. Tara scraped by at 159, her hands shaking as she snapped the last piece in place. Then Olivia stepped up. She didn't rush, didn't hesitate. Her hands moved like they were following a script, pin-out, bolt-free parts laid out in a perfect grid. 52 seconds. Not a single mistake. Sergeant Polk, the instructor, stared at the timer, then at her. "Mitchell," he said, his voice low. "Where'd you learn to do that?" Olivia wiped her hands on her pants and stepped back. "Practice," she said, her eyes on the ground. The training screen played a slow-motion replay, every move clean, no wasted motion. A lieutenant nearby muttered to Polk. Her hands didn't shake. "That's Special Forces steady." Lance overheard and scoffed. "So she can clean a gun," he said loud enough for Olivia to hear. "Doesn't mean she can fight." But during the break, a quiet cadet named Elena, who'd been watching Olivia closely, slipped her a spare map from her own kit. "You'll need this," Elena whispered, her eyes darting to make sure no one saw. Olivia took it, nodded once, and tucked it into her bag without a word. Whispers started after that. A few cadets glanced at her during the next break, trying to piece her together. Olivia didn't seem to care. She sat on the grass, retying her laces, her face as blank as ever. Tara leaned over to Lance, her voice low but sharp. "Bet she's got some sad story. Poor kid from nowhere, trying to prove she's somebody." Lance laughed. "Yeah, well, she's proving she's a nobody." Olivia's fingers paused on her laces just for a moment. Then she kept tying her movements slow, like she was sealing something inside her. In the equipment shed where cadets were assigned gear for the next drill, Olivia waited her turn, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The quartermaster, a gruff older man named Gibbs, handed out vests and helmets with a scowl. When Olivia stepped up, he looked her over, his lip curling. "What's this, a hobo convention?" he said loud enough for the line to hear. "We don't got gear for civilians, sweetheart." He tossed her a vest 2 sizes too big, the straps dangling uselessly. The cadets behind her snickered. "Maybe use it as a tent," one called. Olivia caught the vest, her fingers tightening around the canvas. She didn't argue, didn't ask for a replacement. She just slung it over her shoulder and walked out, her boots echoing on the concrete. Gibbs laughed, shaking his head. "That one's gonna wash out by tomorrow," he said to the room. Outside, Olivia adjusted the vest with a few quick knots, making it fit perfectly, her hands moving with the same precision she'd shown with the rifle. The terrain run the next morning was brutal. 10 miles over rough ground, full gear, no brakes. Olivia stayed in the middle of the pack, her breathing, even her steps steady. Tara was right behind her, muttering the whole time. "Pick it up, charity case," she hissed. "You're dragging us down." At the halfway mark, Tara nudged Olivia's elbow just enough to throw her off. Olivia's foot caught a rock and she veered off the path, her ankle twisting as she hit the ground. Captain Harrow saw it. "Mitchell," he roared. "Broke formation. Squad loses points." The group groaned, some shooting her dirty looks. Lance turned, his face flushed. "Nice one, Mitchell. Real team player." Olivia didn't argue. She got back in line, her jaw tight, and kept running, her limp barely noticeable. When the run ended, Harrow pointed at her. 5 extra laps. Move! The others watched, some smirking, as Olivia started running again, her breath coming in short gasps. She finished, her face slick with sweat, her hands on her knees. No one offered her water. Tara tossed an empty bottle at her feet. "Hydrate with air," she said, laughing. Olivia picked up the bottle, crushed it in her hand, and dropped it in the trash. Not a sound. During a night drill, the cadets were tasked with setting up a perimeter under simulated enemy fire. Flares lit the sky, and instructors shouted orders, creating chaos. Olivia worked alone, securing a rope barrier with steady hands. A cadet named Marcus Stocky and Loud decided she was an easy target. He grabbed her rope, yanking it free, and tossed it into the mud. "Oops," he said, grinning. "Guess you're not cut out for this, huh?" The others nearby laughed, their flashlights bobbing as they watched. Olivia knelt, picked up the rope, and started over, her fingers moving methodically. Marcus wasn't done. He kicked dirt onto her hands, coating the rope in grime. "Keep trying, princess," he said. "Maybe you'll get it by morning." The group roared. Olivia paused, her hands still, then looked up at him. "You done?" She asked, her voice quiet but sharp. Marcus blinked, thrown off, but laughed it off. She went back to work, her face unreadable, the rope clean again in seconds. Later, when the drill ended, Marcus's own barrier was found loose, costing his squad points. No one saw Olivia near it, but Elena, watching from the sidelines, hid a small smile. That night in the barracks, Olivia sat on her bunk, pulling an old photo from her bag. It was creased, the edges worn, showing a younger her standing next to a man in a black jacket. His face was blurred, but his posture, shoulders back, eyes sharp, felt like it carried weight. She traced her finger over the photo, her lips pressing together, then tucked it away when she heard footsteps. Lance walked by, tossing his towel over his shoulder. "Better sleep tight, Mitchell," he said. "Tomorrow's shooting. Don't choke." Olivia didn't look at him. She lay back, hands behind her head, staring at the ceiling, her breathing slow and even. The long-range shooting exam was a make-or-break moment. 5 shots, 400 meters, 5 bullseyes, or you're out. The cadets lined up, nervous, fiddling with their scopes, whispering about wind speed. Tara went first, missing 2 shots, her face pale as she stepped back. Lance hit 4, cursing under his breath. Then Olivia walked up. Tara whispered to the girl next to her. "Bet she can't even hold it right." Olivia settled into position, her movements calm, almost mechanical. 5 shots. 5 perfect hits, dead center. No hesitation, no scope adjustments. The range officer blinked at the target, then called it out. "Mitchell." Perfect score. A colonel watching from a distance, an older man with gray hair and a chest full of medals, leaned forward. "Who trained her?" he murmured to his aide. "That's a Spec Ops trigger." Lance overheard and rolled his eyes. "Fluke," he said. "Let's see her in combat." But during the equipment check, after the range officer found Olivia's rifle had a misaligned sight nobody else had noticed. She'd still hit every shot, compensating perfectly. The officer shook his head, muttering, "That's not luck. That's skill." In the mess hall the next day, Olivia's tray was empty. She'd been last in line, and the food had run out. She sat anyway, sipping water, her face calm. A group of cadets led by a girl named Jenna saw her and decided to have fun. Jenna, tall and smug with a laugh that carried, walked over and dropped a half-eaten apple onto Olivia's tray. "Here," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "Can't have you starving, right? You need strength to, what, carry our bags?" The table behind her burst into laughter. Olivia looked at the apple, then at Jenna, her eyes steady. "Thanks," she said, picking it up and taking a slow bite. Jenna's smile faltered. She'd expected a reaction, not this. The group kept laughing, but it was forced now. Olivia finished the apple, core and all, and set the tray aside. As she stood to leave, she brushed past Jenna, her shoulder just grazing her enough to make Jenna step back. The room went quiet for a moment, watching her go. The combat simulation was the real test. One-on-one, hand-to-hand, no weapons. Olivia was paired against Lance, who towered over her, his fists clenched, a grin spreading across his face. Before the whistle blew, he charged, grabbing her collar and slamming her against the wall. Her shirt tore the fabric, ripping from her shoulder to her back, exposing a faded black tattoo across her scapula. The squad burst into laughter. "She's inked up too," Tara jeered. "What is this, a biker gang?" Lance leaned in his face, inches from hers. "This isn't daycare, Mitchell." It's a battlefield. Go home, rookie. Olivia didn't move. Her eyes locked on his steady, unblinking. Let go, she said, her voice low. Lance laughed, but his grip loosened just for a second. She stepped back, turned, and the torn shirt fell lower, revealing the full tattoo, a coiled black viper with a shattered skull. The yard went silent. The colonel, the one who'd been watching, stepped forward, his boots crunching on the gravel. His eyes widened, his face pale. Who gave you the right to wear that mark? He asked, his voice shaking. Olivia stood there, her back straight, the tattoo stark against her skin. I didn't ask for it, she said quietly. It was given by Ghost Viper himself. I trained under him for 6 years. The colonel froze, then straightened his hand, snapping to his forehead in a salute. The other officers stared their mouths open. Lance stumbled back, his face drained of color. An aide whispered, "No one bears that tattoo, unless they're his final student." Tara's smirk vanished. She looked away, her hands trembling. During a strategy briefing the next morning, Olivia sat in the back, her notebook open, her pen moving quickly. The instructor, a stern woman named Major Klein, was explaining defensive tactics when she called on Olivia, her tone sharp. "Mitchell, you got something to add, or you just doodling back there?" The room turned, expecting her to shrink. Olivia looked up, her pen still, and said, "Your flank's exposed on the left. You'd lose half your unit in an ambush." Klein blinked, caught off guard. She glanced at the diagram, then back at Olivia. "Explain," she said. Olivia stood, walked to the board, and drew a quick adjustment, her lines precise. "Shift your scouts here," she said. "Cuts their angle of attack." The room was silent. Klein nodded slowly, then said, "Noted. Sit down." As Olivia returned to her seat, Tara whispered, "Teacher's pet now." But Klein overheard and snapped, "Quiet, cadet. She just saved your hypothetical lives." Tara's face burned and the room shifted, eyes lingering on Olivia with new respect. Ghost Viper. The name was a ghost itself, a whisper from a unit erased from records 5 years ago. No one spoke of it openly, but the stories lingered, missions that never happened. Operatives who vanished, a leader who trained only a few each, marked with that tattoo. Olivia didn't look at the colonel, didn't look at anyone. She pulled her torn shirt back over her shoulder and walked to the edge of the yard, her steps slow, deliberate. The silence followed her, heavy, unbroken. Lance couldn't let it go. His pride wouldn't allow it. He stood in the middle of the yard, his fists clenched, his voice echoing. "So what if she has a tattoo?" he shouted. "Prove it in a real fight." The cadets looked at each other, unsure. Olivia stopped walking. She turned, her eyes cold, and said, "If that's what you want." She didn't fix her shirt, just let it hang, the tattoo still visible, her stance calm but unyielding. Lance charged, swinging wildly, his fists aimed at her face. Olivia dodged every punch, her movements fluid, almost effortless. He yelled, "Hit me already!" She didn't. She let him tire himself out, his swings getting sloppier, his breath ragged. Then in one motion she stepped forward. A snap, choke, her arm around his neck, a twist, a pull. 8 seconds. Lance collapsed unconscious, his body limp on the ground. No one spoke. Captain Harrow walked over, his face unreadable. He looked at Lance, then at Olivia, then at the group. Effective immediately, he said, "Olivia Mitchell is honorary instructor. You'll learn from her." Olivia didn't nod, didn't smile. She picked up her backpack, pulled her torn shirt closed, and walked off. The cadets parted for her, their eyes down, their laughter gone. During a live fire exercise the next day, Olivia was assigned to lead a small team through a mock urban assault. Her group included Tara, who rolled her eyes at the assignment. As they moved through the course, Tara deliberately ignored Olivia's signals, rushing ahead and triggering a tripwire that set off a deafening siren. The exercise halted, and Harrow stormed over, his face red. "Mitchell, your team's a mess," he bellowed. Tara smirked, whispering to Derek, "Told you she's useless." Olivia stood there, her hands steady, and said, "Tara broke formation. I signaled her to wait." Harrow turned to Tara, who shrugged. "Didn't see it," she lied. The group snickered, blaming Olivia for the failure. She didn't argue, just nodded and said, "Understood, sir." But as they reset, an overhead drone replay showed Tara ignoring the signal clear as day. Harrow watched the footage, his jaw tight, and docked Tara's squad points. The group's laughter died, and Tara's face went pale. The camp changed after that. The air felt heavier, the whispers quieter. Olivia stood at the front of the yard the next day, her backpack over one shoulder, her t-shirt swapped for a plain black one. She didn't bark orders, didn't raise her voice. She just showed them rifle drills, combat stances, moves that looked simple but took years to perfect. The cadets watched, some scribbling notes, others just staring. Tara sat in the back, her arms crossed, her face pale. Lance wasn't there. Word was he'd been sent to medical, then reassigned to a desk job at a base in the middle of nowhere. No one talked about it, but everyone knew. In a first aid drill, Olivia was paired with Derek, who'd mocked her in the mess hall. They had to treat a simulated casualty under time pressure. Derek, eager to show off, shoved Olivia aside as she reached for the bandage kit. "I got this," he said loud enough for the group to hear. "You'd probably just make it worse." He fumbled the bandages, wrapping them, too loose blood seeping through the dummy's fake wounds. The instructor, a medic named Carter, shook his head. "You're killing him, cadet." Derek's face reddened and he snapped, "She distracted me," pointing at Olivia. The group laughed, egging him on. Olivia stepped forward, her hands steady, and redid the bandages in seconds, her wraps tight and perfect. Carter nodded, impressed. "That's how it's done," he said. Derek stormed off muttering, but the group's laughter turned to murmurs. Later, Carter pulled Olivia aside and handed her a medic patch, saying, "You earned this." She took it, her face blank, and slipped it into her bag. A week later, during a break, an officer approached Olivia. He was young, nervous, clutching a clipboard. "Ma'am," he said, his voice low. "There's someone here for you." Olivia looked up, her eyes narrowing. She followed him to the camp's entrance, where a man stood waiting. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with short-cropped hair and a face that gave nothing away. He wore a black jacket and jeans, no uniform, but the guard stepped back when he moved. The colonel was there too, his hands clasped behind his back. "General," he said, nodding to the man. The man didn't respond. He looked at Olivia, his eyes softening for a moment. She walked up to him, her face unreadable, and stopped a few feet away. "You didn't have to come," she said. He tilted his head, almost smiling. "Yeah," he said. "I did." The cadets watching from a distance went quiet. Tara, standing nearby, dropped her water bottle, the plastic clattering on the ground. The colonel cleared his throat, addressing the group. "This is General Thomas Reed," he said. "Olivia's husband." The words hit like a shockwave. Reed didn't say anything else. He put a hand on Olivia's shoulder, and they walked to the pickup she'd arrived in. The engine roared to life, and they drove off, the dust kicking up behind them. No one moved until the truck was gone. During a final review, the camp's top brass gathered to evaluate the cadets' progress. Olivia's name came up and the room went quiet. A junior officer, unaware of her story, suggested cutting her for lack of leadership. The colonel, the same one who'd saluted her, leaned forward, his voice low. "Mitchell's file is classified," he said. "But I'll tell you this, she's the only one here who could have run this camp blindfolded." He pulled out a sealed envelope stamped with a black Viper emblem and slid it across the table. "Her evaluations from Ghost Viper. Read them. Then tell me who's lacking." The officer opened it, his hands trembling, and went pale. The room stayed silent as he read, his eyes widening with every line. Olivia wasn't there. She didn't need to be. Her truth was already rewriting the story. The fallout was swift. Tara's sponsorship with a defense contractor vanished after a video of her mocking Olivia went viral. It wasn't Olivia who posted it, just a cadet with a phone and a sense of justice. Tara left the camp a week later, her head down, her bags packed. Lance's reassignment wasn't the end for him either. His name came up in an internal review and he was discharged for conduct unbecoming. The others, the ones who'd laughed, who'd tossed empty bottles, didn't face formal punishment, but they carried something heavier. Shame. The kind that lingers, that makes you avoid mirrors. Olivia didn't return to the camp. Her name stayed on the instructor roster, but she never taught another session. Some said she was with Reed running a training program, no one could confirm. Others said she'd vanished just like Ghost Viper. But the cadets who'd seen her, who'd watched her move, who'd felt the weight of her silence, they didn't forget. They told her story, passed it down, let it grow. Not a legend, not a myth. Just the truth of a woman who didn't need to shout to be heard. Years earlier, Olivia had been different. Not softer, but younger, her edges less defined. She'd trained in a compound nobody knew existed under a man whose name was never spoken. He'd chosen her not because of her family's money, but because of her quiet, because she listened, because she moved with purpose. 6 years she'd learned his ways, the rifle, the choke, the way to stand so the world noticed without you saying a word. He'd given her the tattoo himself, the needle biting into her skin as he said, "This isn't a badge. It's a promise." She'd knotted her jaw tight and carried that promise ever since. Back in the camp, the days after her departure felt hollow. The cadets trained harder, but the energy was different. They'd seen something they couldn't unsee. During a night drill, one of the younger recruits, a kid named Sam, found Olivia's old photo in the barracks tucked under a bunk. He held it up, squinting at the blurred man in the black jacket. "Who was she really?" he asked the group. No one answered. Tara, still there, but quieter now, looked at the floor. Sam slipped the photo into his pocket, not sure why, but feeling like it mattered. The consequences kept coming. The defense contractor who dropped Tara faced a PR nightmare when the video spread further, their stock dipping as online forums lit up with outrage. Lance's discharge wasn't just a footnote. His family name, once respected, became a cautionary tale in military circles. Captain Harrow, who'd yelled at Olivia for breaking formation, was called into a meeting with the colonel. Nobody heard what was said, but Harrow was quieter after that, his orders less harsh, his eyes scanning the yard like he was looking for something he'd missed. Olivia's story didn't end with the camp. It spread, carried by the cadets, by the officers, by the whispers that followed her name. It reached the older folks, the ones who'd been judged their whole lives, who'd been told they didn't belong. They heard about the woman who'd walked into a room full of scorn and walked out with a salute. They understood her silence, her steady hands, the way she didn't need to explain herself. Her story was theirs, a reminder that truth doesn't need a megaphone. It just needs time. In the end, it wasn't about the tattoo or the rifle or the choke that dropped Lance. It was about Olivia's presence, the way she carried her pain, her past, her power, all without a word. She didn't need to prove herself. The world caught up like it always does. And for everyone who'd ever been pushed aside, her story was a quiet promise your time's coming. Hold your ground. You're enough. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.